When Britain entered the darkest months of the Second World War, its survival depended not only on fighter squadrons over the Channel or convoys crossing the Atlantic, but on something far quieter: information. The RAF needed to see farther, earlier, and more accurately than the Luftwaffe. Yet by 1940, the traditional reconnaissance aircraft, slow, vulnerable, and often adapted from pre-war designs, were proving increasingly inadequate against faster German fighters and expanding flak networks. What Britain required was an aircraft that challenged the basic assumptions of aerial intelligence. Instead of guns, turrets, and armor, it would rely on something far more counterintuitive: pure speed. And the answer came from wood, glue, and an idea that almost no one inside the Air Ministry believed would work. The de Havilland Mosquito was not designed at first as a spy plane. It emerged from Geoffrey de Havilland's controversial proposal for a high-speed bomber built almost entirely from wood, a material most experts considered obsolete in an age dominated by aluminium. But it was precisely this unconventional construction that made the Mosquito invaluable as a reconnaissance platform. It offered two unlikely advantages: a smooth, aerodynamic surface that reduced drag, and a structure that did not consume strategic metals Britain desperately needed for fighters and heavy bombers. Even before the first prototype flew, de Havilland's design team understood that the same attributes that made it fast would make it ideal for collecting intelligence deep inside enemy territory. When the prototype took to the air in November 1940, the results were immediate and remarkable. The wooden aircraft was faster than almost anything the RAF or Luftwaffe possessed at the time. It outpaced frontline fighters, including the early Spitfires used to chase it during trials. For reconnaissance planners, this changed the entire equation. An aircraft that could fly higher than enemy flak, outrun interceptors, and carry advanced cameras meant the RAF could capture detailed images of shipyards, submarine pens, rocket sites, and troop concentrations that were previously unreachable or too dangerous to observe for long. The RAF's photo-reconnaissance unit, PRU, already operating modified Spitfires, saw potential in the Mosquito from the start. Its large bomb bay could be repurposed for cameras, fuel tanks, or specialized equipment. Its wooden skin produced less vibration than metal, improving image clarity, a crucial detail for long-range intelligence photography. And unlike single-engine reconnaissance fighters, the Mosquito's twin Merlin engines offered both power and reliability across missions that stretched hundreds of miles into hostile airspace. As the war intensified, these early test flights convinced planners that the Mosquito could transform British intelligence-gathering capabilities. And this shift would shape the aircraft's evolution into the fastest and most effective photo-reconnaissance platform of the entire conflict. The RAF moved quickly to turn this promise into operational capability. Early reconnaissance variants, such as the PR.4, were stripped of all armament, armor, and unnecessary equipment. Every kilogram removed meant more speed, and every increase in speed meant a higher chance of surviving deep penetration missions. The aircraft was repainted in a pale blue that blended with the upper atmosphere, and its internal fuel capacity was expanded to allow flights far beyond the reach of any previous RAF spy plane. What emerged was an aircraft capable of cruising above 30,000 feet and reaching speeds that even newly introduced German fighters struggled to intercept. For intelligence officers accustomed to incomplete or outdated imagery, the Mosquito was a revelation. Its first operational missions demonstrated exactly why. Mosquitoes overflew French coastal defenses, submarine bases at Brest, and industrial targets in the Ruhr with unprecedented frequency. The aircraft could photograph a target, turn for home, and vanish from German radar screens before local fighter units scrambled. Flak batteries accustomed to tracking lumbering reconnaissance platforms found themselves helpless against an aircraft that appeared briefly as a blur before disappearing into the horizon. The Luftwaffe, faced with this new threat, was forced to commit faster interceptors and reposition fighter wings, an operational shift driven not by bombers or fighters, but by reconnaissance aircraft. The Mosquito's ability to operate in poor weather conditions further expanded its utility. Its powerful Merlins and clean aerodynamic lines allowed it to climb quickly through cloud layers and conduct high-altitude photography at times when other aircraft were grounded. This meant that the RAF's intelligence services, including MI4 and later the Allied Central Interpretation Unit at Peenemünde, received a continuous flow of images essential for planning missions across Europe. These photographs documented factory production changes, airfield expansions, troop relocations, and defensive buildups along the Atlantic Wall. Strategic raids like the attack on the Peugeot factory in France or operations against German radar stations relied heavily on mosquito imagery to determine timing, approach angles, and bomb loads. One of the key advantages of the wooden airframe was its stability. Metal aircraft often suffered from vibration that blurred long-range vertical photographs, but the Mosquito delivered crisp, high-resolution images even when flying at extreme speeds. This made it invaluable for assessing the development of German secret weapons. The RAF needed precise intelligence on V-1 launch sites, V-2 assembly depots, and the sprawling Peenemünde research complex. Mosquitoes provided it. Their photographs revealed construction stages, camouflage patterns, and even rail shipments, details that directly informed Allied bombing priorities. By 1943, the scale of Mosquito reconnaissance operations had grown dramatically. Multiple squadrons operated from England, Malta, and forward bases in Italy, extending coverage over the entire European theater. These missions, though unarmed, were anything but routine. Crews routinely faced long flights over the Bay of Biscay, the Alps, and heavily defended German industrial regions. Yet the loss rates remained far lower than comparable reconnaissance aircraft. Speed was not simply an advantage, it was survival. This combination of reach, image clarity, and survivability pushed the Mosquito into missions that no other aircraft could attempt at the time. As Allied demands for intelligence increased, the Mosquito's reconnaissance role evolved into something far more ambitious. Long-range strategic surveillance of targets beyond the normal reach of RAF aircraft. The introduction of the PR.8 and later the PR.16 refined the concept even further. These variants added pressurized cabins, larger wings for improved high-altitude performance, and increased fuel capacity through both internal and slipper tanks. The result was an aircraft capable of flying well above 35,000 feet for hours at a time, collecting imagery that shaped the strategic direction of the air war. For planners preparing the combined bomber offensive or anticipating German redeployments after setbacks on the Eastern Front, these flights provided some of the only reliable insights into what was happening deep inside the Reich. Berlin became one of the most heavily photographed cities by Mosquito crews. They documented everything from the reconstruction of bombed rail yards to the dispersal of aircraft factories into forests and rural villages. The RAF's intelligence analysts noted how rapidly Germany shifted critical production underground, and Mosquito photographs helped confirm which plants were active, inactive, or camouflaged. Hamburg, Cologne, and Essen were covered with similar regularity. Even after devastating raids, Mosquitoes were often the first aircraft over the target to evaluate damage, identify repair efforts, and mark new high-value objectives for subsequent strikes. This rapid photographic feedback loop, attack, assess, refine, was something the Allies had never been able to conduct at such speed before the Mosquito. The aircraft's reach was not limited to cities. Long-range Mosquito flights monitored German naval movements in the North Sea and Baltic, where U-boats, destroyers, and capital ships attempted to hide among fjords or under cloud cover. One of the most famous examples was the surveillance of the battleship Tirpitz. Stationed in Norwegian waters, Tirpitz represented a constant threat to Arctic convoys supplying the Soviet Union. Mosquito reconnaissance aircraft photographed its movements, its camouflaged anchorages, and even the changing state of its anti-aircraft defenses. For months, these images guided the planning of multiple British operations aimed at neutralizing the ship, including carrier strikes and the eventual heavy bomber raids that finally forced Tirpitz out of action. The Mosquito's combination of altitude and speed also allowed it to penetrate regions previously considered too dangerous. Flights over the Ruhr, an area saturated with flak, were completed with such regularity that German commanders grew increasingly frustrated. The aircraft simply arrived too fast and too high for most defensive measures to respond effectively. Luftwaffe pilots, particularly those flying early Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s, reported the near impossibility of catching a Mosquito on a well-executed escape course. Even when scrambled quickly, fighters often reached interception altitude only to see the aircraft descending into cloud cover or retreating toward the coast at over 350 miles per hour. These frustrations pushed the Germans to commit their few high-altitude fighters, including specially tuned FW-190s and Bf-109GS, to chase the reconnaissance Mosquitoes. But the scale remained one-sided. The RAF could launch multiple sorties a day while the Luftwaffe struggled to maintain a handful of capable interceptors. This imbalance meant the Allies maintained a consistent picture of German preparations, something the Mosquito exploited again and again. By late 1943, the aircraft's success had reshaped the RAF's intelligence doctrine. What began as experimental reconnaissance flights had transformed into a highly coordinated strategic tool. The next stage in the Mosquito's evolution would take its capabilities even further, pushing into altitudes and distances unmatched by any other reconnaissance aircraft of the war. The introduction of high-altitude variants like the PR.32 marked a turning point in the Mosquito's reconnaissance career. Equipped with extended wings, uprated Merlin engines, and an optimized pressurization system, these aircraft operated at heights exceeding 40,000 feet, altitudes that placed them beyond the practical reach of nearly all German interceptors. At such heights, the curvature of the Earth was visible, cloud systems stretched like vast plains beneath the aircraft, and German early warning networks struggled to track the intruder long enough to direct fighters toward it. This remarkable ceiling allowed crews to photograph targets deep inside Central and Eastern Europe, including synthetic fuel plants in Silesia and industrial zones supporting the Eastern Front. The mere ability to operate at these altitudes created an intelligence stream that no other Allied aircraft could match at the time. The photographic technology carried by these Mosquitoes had advanced just as rapidly. Vertical and oblique cameras such as the F-24 and F-52 captured images with astonishing clarity for their era, sometimes revealing individual vehicles, camouflage structures, or the outlines of newly built assembly halls. Long focal-length lenses allowed crews to photograph sensitive sites without descending into the most dangerous flak zones. In some missions, Mosquitoes captured imagery from over 20 miles away, providing analysts at Peenemünde with detailed visual confirmation of German movements and fortifications. This combination of altitude, speed, and increasingly sophisticated optical equipment made the Mosquito indispensable to Allied intelligence. Not all missions were conducted from extreme height. Some required precision that could only be achieved at medium or even low altitude, particularly when monitoring coastal defenses, V-weapon storage sites, or rail junctions hidden beneath extensive camouflage nets. The Mosquito's maneuverability at lower levels allowed crews to make quick, sweeping passes that exposed concealed structures or revealed traffic patterns along key supply routes. These daring flights often involved threading through valleys or racing along coastlines, where the aircraft's speed and responsiveness gave it a fighting chance against ground fire. In several instances, crews returned with branches lodged in the airframe, evidence of how low they had flown to secure the photographs needed for impending operations. The intelligence produced in these months shaped the strategic decisions of 1944. As the Allies prepared for the invasion of Normandy, Mosquito reconnaissance provided continuous updates on German fortifications stretching from Calais to the Cotentin Peninsula. Pilots photographed beach obstacles, anti-tank ditches, gun emplacements, radar stations, and troop concentrations. The aircraft also documented German attempts at deception, dummy batteries, inflatable tanks, and false road networks designed to mislead Allied analysts. Peenemünde used Mosquito imagery to distinguish genuine threats from elaborate diversions, refining the invasion plan and determining which targets the RAF and USAF needed to suppress before D-Day. By this stage, Mosquito reconnaissance squadrons operated with a professionalism that rivaled bomber units in scale and precision. Mission planning took into account sun angles, expected shadow lengths, cloud forecasts, and even the reflective properties of terrain. Crews flew alone, without escort, relying solely on their aircraft's performance to protect them. And yet, despite the risks, loss rates throughout 1944 remained remarkably low compared to other reconnaissance aircraft. This resilience encouraged the RAF to push the Mosquito into increasingly distant theaters, expanding its reconnaissance impact as the Allies prepared for the final assault on Germany. As the final phase of the war approached, the Mosquito's reconnaissance capabilities reached their greatest strategic value. With Allied forces pushing across France and into the Low Countries, the pace of operations demanded near-continuous intelligence updates. Mosquito crews monitored German withdrawals, bridge demolitions, and the rapid construction of defensive lines along river barriers such as the Maas and the Rhine. Their photographs documented the shifting positions of panzer divisions, the reorganization of Luftwaffe fighter units, and the dispersal of jet aircraft at improvised airfields. In a campaign defined by mobility and uncertainty, the ability to obtain fresh imagery within hours allowed Allied commanders to anticipate German movements and avoid costly miscalculations. One of the most important contributions came during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. When German forces launched their surprise offensive through the Ardennes, poor weather initially grounded most Allied aircraft. But the moment conditions allowed, Mosquitoes were among the first in the air. They photographed the extent of the German advance, the positions of armored spearheads, and the bottlenecks forming along the narrow forest roads. These early reconnaissance flights provided accurate assessments that challenged initial intelligence estimates and helped coordinate counterattacks. In several instances, Mosquito imagery revealed German fuel shortages, abandoned vehicles, and overstretched supply routes, details that informed the Allied response and accelerated the collapse of the offensive. Beyond the Western Front, long-range Mosquito operations expanded into the Balkans and northern Italy, where German supply routes wound through mountains and river valleys. The aircraft's ability to survey large areas in a single sortie made it invaluable for identifying transportation choke points, hidden depots, and troop concentrations supporting the retreat from Greece and Yugoslavia. Even in these rugged regions, the aircraft's wooden airframe performed reliably in varied climates and altitudes, reinforcing its reputation as one of the most adaptable platforms of the war. As Allied bombers intensified their attacks on Germany's industrial heartland, Mosquito reconnaissance played a critical role in assessing the diminishing capability of German production. Photographs revealed power outages, abandoned parts of factories, and the crippling effects of transportation breakdowns. Synthetic fuel plants, which the Luftwaffe depended upon to keep its remaining aircraft operational, were repeatedly analyzed, with Mosquito imagery guiding follow-up strikes that systematically dismantled the Reich's ability to sustain combat operations. In the final months of the war, Mosquitoes flew deeper into collapsing German territory, often encountering empty skies where Luftwaffe fighters once scrambled to intercept them. Yet vigilance remained essential. Crews photographed the last operational jet bases, the remnants of anti-aircraft defenses, and the movement of German units attempting to escape into the Alps. Their work was not simply tactical. It formed a visual record of a disintegrating military machine. These images would become vital for post-war assessments of German industrial capacity, infrastructure damage, and the effectiveness of the strategic bombing campaign. When the war in Europe ended in May 1945, the Mosquito stood apart from every other reconnaissance aircraft of the conflict. It had flown farther, faster, and with fewer losses than any of its contemporaries. Its wooden construction, dismissed by many at the beginning of the war, had proven not only viable but ideal for a high-speed spy plane. It provided stability for precision photography, avoided the weight penalties of metal designs, and enabled performance that consistently outpaced German defenses. Above all, it delivered the intelligence that shaped the Allied air war and supported operations from North Africa to the Arctic Circle. The Mosquito service did not end with the conflict. Many aircraft continued reconnaissance duties in the immediate post-war years, surveying bomb damage, mapping cities, and supporting Allied occupation forces. But its wartime legacy remained unmatched. A wooden aircraft that defied conventional thinking, outperformed expectations, and became the fastest and most effective photo-reconnaissance platform of the Second World War. Its success demonstrated that innovation in design and doctrine could change the course of intelligence gathering, proving that speed, combined with clarity of purpose, was often the most powerful weapon in the air. If you enjoyed this deep look into one of Britain's most remarkable aircraft, consider supporting the channel. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. It helps this history reach more people who appreciate stories of engineering, innovation, and the realities of war. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from today?